I've lost track.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome to the January 11th Tempe City Council work study session. First item on the agenda is our call to the audience for the issue review session and the committee of the whole items. Members of the audience have up to 3 minutes to address the council on items listed on this agenda. If you would like to speak on any of the items, please get my attention and also fill out a speaker's card, which can be found in the back of the room, and hand it to our Assistant City Clerk, Dusty, and we'll hand it over to Ms. Kuiper, our City Clerk, and we'll take those comments as we go. I do have one card, and it is Janine Devine, and she would like to speak regarding the border wall. Jeannie? Oh,
It's you, you're up.
you want to come speak on item number 2F? No, that's okay. Thank you for coming. Please state your name and place of residence for the record.
Okay, my name is Jean Devine, and I live at 3323 South McAllister in Tempe. That's all for the record, okay. As a little background, I am the founder and previous executive director of Unlimited Potential, which is a nonprofit that provides educational programs to Hispanic immigrant women and preschoolers in South Phoenix. And I'm also a member of the Sierra Club, and I'm very cognizant of environmental effects of the border wall. So I came today to speak to you. I applaud that you are considering not supporting the border wall, and I wanted to give you my 3 reasons why I oppose a border wall. First of all, to me, the border wall signals division and separation. It's a we versus them message, and it's based on opposition versus cooperation. The wall sends a message of hate and distrust to people on both sides of the border, especially to our Arizona Hispanic adults and children who already feel less valued by mainstream culture, who know firsthand they cannot easily cross the border to visit relatives and grandparents in Mexico. They can't shop easily on the Mexican side of the border. They miss important births and deaths of their families on the southern side of the border. The wall ignores their common history dating from Native American and Spanish roots, and furthermore, it reinforces that those without legal papers, including the 800,000 dreamers, should have no access to family ties on the other side of the border. So I believe it's a violation of human rights, the wall is. Secondly, that we are willing to spend billions of dollars to keep out Mexicans sends a really negative message to the Mexican-American community. Why not use this money to address the causes of illegal immigration? We could develop cooperative programs with Mexico. I know we have some already, but ones that address drugs, poverty, crime, guns, and economic development. And in so doing, we would be working towards connections between Mexico and the United States. And since Mexico is our major economic and cultural partner. And my third reason is it's contrary to environmental and to Native American interests, would further destroy wildlife habitat, which we already have seen for many, many years now, and divides historic tribal lands and communities. So for those 3 reasons, I ask this Tempe City Council to consider and to not approve a wall, to stand up strong against a wall on our borders. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anyone, that's the only card I have. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address us on any of the items listed on the work study session or the issue review session? Now is the time to get my attention. Yes, please come forward. State your name and place of residence for the record.
I pulled that timing off pretty well. My name is Christian Doak. I live at 504 West Brown Street, Tempe. And I'm here in my capacity both as a board member of Tempe Bicycle Action Group and also as a citizen of Tempe. I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about the Vision Zero framework proposal. So, Tempe really should not be a city where a person might die because they're just trying to go somewhere. whether they're traveling by bike, by car, or on foot. Fortunately, this isn't currently the case, as a number of recent tragedies have highlighted. We should aspire to be better. There are many root causes behind the fatal accidents in our city. Occasionally, it's a negligent driver. Sometimes lax enforcement allows dangerous behavior on our roads. And in rare occasions, our traffic infrastructure is actually designed in a manner that is dangerous to the people who are using it. The last case is what caused the death of Xiaoyan Wen, a PhD student who was just weeks away from completing his doctorate at ASU. Poor design of the intersection at Rural and Vista del Cerro resulted in pedestrians and cyclists crossing the road at the exact location where traffic was turning left. This poor design ended a very promising life far too soon. We can do much better than this. We should do a better job of enforcing our traffic laws. We should do a better job of designing our streets to ensure everyone's safety. We should do our best to educate all drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians in how to use our infrastructure in the safest way possible. The adoption of a Vision Zero framework and an aggressive pursuit of its goals would be an excellent step in the right direction for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address us? Could you please get my attention? I see an individual back there. Dusty, are they actually wanting to speak? Okay, that's what I thought. Hi, welcome. Please come forward. State your name and place of residence for the record. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Aaron.
We're already
Hey,
there.
welcome.
Just walked in at the right time.
You did.
I'm not prepared.
Please state your name and place of residence for the record. Now, this is, you can only comment on items listed on the issue review session and work study session.
Oh, well, okay, I'm Victor Arano.
Good to see you, Victor.
Should I stand up or sit
You
down?
can sit down.
Okay, I'll do that. Nice to see so many of you here today. What happened to items A through E?
Well, right now, this is a public comment period, so now is your opportunity to speak on items A
Through G.
through G.
Through G. Got it,
You
all
have
right.
3 minutes.
Okay, well, I wanted to address this resolution on the wall.
Perfect.
I think that the position that the city is taking, or what I was informed of the position the city was taking, which I understand is in opposition to the wall. Am I correct about this?
Yes.
Yes. Is not only a good position, but it's a position that every municipality in Arizona ought to support. And there are a number of reasons for that, but probably I think the greatest reason is that walls are products of fear. People don't put up walls unless they're afraid of something. And this wall is a wall of enormous proportions, or at least that's how it was presented to us. Now it turns out that it's not such a big wall after all. It's in fact, according to the newspaper that I was reading yesterday, it's only going to be around 800 miles long, and it's going to cost us $18 billion. Now, I think that's probably more than the Big Dig in Boston cost, which up to its time was the largest construction project in the United States. So I sat down with my pencil and I said, wait a minute, let me see now. There's 138 million taxpayers in the United States. And if you do the math, it turns out that each one of those taxpayers is going to be paying, over the 10-year amortization of this wall, $110 a year to pay for this 800-mile-long fence. Now, it just doesn't make any sense to me that the taxpayers of Tempe should have an additional $110 a year tax burden placed on them to put up a fence to keep out people that basically we're afraid of. Why are we afraid of them? Because they speak a different language, because they're short, because they're
Hey,
brown.
I take offense to that.
You know,
I'm afraid.
why is the administration of the United States and our president afraid of these people? for no logical
Comment.
reason whatsoever. The real reason, I think, is probably because of that $110 every year that's going to go into the construction companies, that's going to go into land purchases, that's going to go into tearing up our national wildlife preserves, that's going to buy up the river bottom and whatever else they have to do. And I think that it would be much better if the taxpayers and residents of this city were paying that $110 a year right here, right into the city treasury, so that we could have better highways, we could have better street marking, we could have better facilities for the government. And this is why I would be opposed to the wall on this foot.
All right, Victor, thank you. Your time is up.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your comments. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we're not paying for the wall.
Oh, yeah, Mexico. Mexico's paying for it.
We are paying.
At least that's what we've been told. I don't, it's yet to be
Taxes
seen.
are going down.
Well,
I'm just-
my
That's what he
time
said.
is up.
Thank you,
We can
Victor.
talk about that.
That's a good one. All right, is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address us on the issue review items as well as the work study session items listed on this agenda? Could you please get my attention? Seeing none, I'll close that portion of the public meeting or open or public discussion comment. Next item is items 2A, which is, we're going to, time 2B actually, the Tempe Community Council's 2017 Community Needs Assessment. I know we have Valerie and some members of the TCCs would come forward. No?
Mayor, the agency review.
Oh, agency
Okay.
review, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2A. Agency review first, then needs assessment. My apologies.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. We come to you for the second time to present the report of the impact that the designated dollars for $736,040 for the agency review process, to let you know how successful that process was in 2016-17. Just to emphasize that, that is actually the piece that is the year that we are looking at is our past year. With me today is Octavia Harris, who is our Community Impact Manager for Tempe Community Council.
Welcome.
Thank you. What really sets Tempe apart in this grant process is the drive and intention to have community engagement in every way. This was done during fiscal year 16-17 with an incredible cadre of volunteers who live and or work in Tempe and dedicated over 20 hours of time and service over a 3-month period. Although the majority of the work of the volunteers is reviewing applications, conducting interviews, and making recommendations, we keep the momentum going of their engagement in the spring and summer with site visits to agencies that are funded. All 46 of our fiscal year 16-17 agency review volunteers were invited to see the agencies in person. Staff visited about 1/3 of partner agencies each year. It's 13 for FY 16-17. Agencies that are new or have not received a site visit in the past 3 years are chosen for those visits. This is an opportunity for staff to incorporate an evaluation process, focus for the process, but for the volunteers, it really brings to life the words and numbers that they read in the application. One of those amazing volunteers whom I've had the pleasure to work with extensively on agency review is Nathaniel Pretlow. He is the co-chair of the Agency Review Enhancement Committee and secretary of the Tempe Community Council Board.
For fiscal year 16-17, through the AR process, the city invested over $736,000 to these 6 populations across the continuum of crisis, stability, and self-sufficiency. From general funds were $448,229. CDBG funds were $95,788. Help to others, which is the water bill dollars, was $90,023. And help to others where from TCC donations from the Don Carlos event was an additional $12,000. And the display panel was $98,000. Now here you can see the types of services per each population and the investment per population. I'd like to point out one thing from each population. The Tempe police received approximately 3,700 calls per year related to domestic violence. There are 629 unduplicated, unsheltered homeless in Tempe. There are 14,126 Tempe residents with a disability. There are 15,273 individuals living in Tempe who are 65 years or older, and 31% of them are raising their grandchildren. 21.1% or 38,507 individuals live in poverty in Tempe. 78% of our public school children receive free or reduced lunches. Note that the services provided support the Council Priority 3.10 and align with Council Priorities 1.20, 1.21, 3.06, 3.07, 3.08, 3.09, and 3.13, and 3.20. Here you see the numbers served in each population, which totals over 38,000 Tempeans served last year who were in need in our community and who were able to receive services because of your investment. We then can look at each of the populations, and you can see a snippet of their measurable outcomes achieved last year. We have this slide for each of the 6 populations. On the left, you can see the investment per population and the agencies providing the services. And in the colored box, we have a snapshot of the raw numbers and correlating outcomes collected. These numbers depict the total unduplicated Tempeans for 1 year that achieved the outcomes specified by the agencies. Outcome totals are not equivalent to total clients served. On this slide, over 307,000 was invested in youth. This population received the largest funding, this contribution out of all the target populations. Some common themes for youth program services were literacy, prevention steps, life, and leadership skills. You can see the homeless target population, over $170,000 was invested, and the takeaways here are the services focused on providing basic needs, addressing substance abuse and or mental health issues, and creating an action plan to ending individuals' homelessness. For the population affected by domestic violence, over $86,000 was invested, with the main focus being provision of basic needs, creating a safety plan, and focusing on the family to help break the cycle of abuse. For the working poor, over $80,000 was invested, and the main focus for this target population is information and referral in the community about the resources we have available, and increasing knowledge about food and nutrition services available. But a gap exists. The gap that exists is others are not aware of what they are. They are where they are and how to access them. So with this investment, we're able to get the word out. For the population of individuals with disabilities, there was an investment made of over $38,000, and the outcomes here are primarily on promoting positive attitudes and providing respite and care. For the senior population, over $52,000 was invested, and the main takeaways are the services that focus on improving the well-being of older adults in our community and providing education to them about their health insurance options. So we talked a little bit about the numbers, but there is more meaning in to the data. Here are just some of the faces of those served in our community. You can see Tempe is diverse, it is vibrant, and we care because we are Tempe. And we can, sorry.
Go ahead.
And we can end with Gabriella, a client at Homeward Bound who shares the impact that Tempe's funding support and services have made for her family.
Can we click on that? Greg, can you help us? Can you click on that for the actual testimonial?
Who's enjoying the trip?
Thank you to Tempe Community Council, because what you provided sorry, that's okay. What you provided for my boys and I was truly a new life in a safe area with so much life within itself. As we built our funds, we were able to experience the free transportation, the amazing programs at the library, the great recreational sports programs in Escalante, the staff, just a ball of energy and positive energy no matter where we went. We could wake up every weekend and there was something going on in Tempe that didn't cost me a lot of money, and it was possible for my boys and I to attend. Visiting ASU, walking around the campus, just seeing the possibilities of what our future could be. I can tell you my boys refuse to wear anything that says NAU. They will only wear ASU gear because that's how connected they felt when we would travel the grounds and attend any event that they had available. But ultimately it was a breath of fresh air, because no matter where I went or we went, it was something new to us. It was positive. It just felt like it was put into place for families, and for us, we felt part of the community. So, for instance, with them being able to participate in the sports and with a very minimal fee, they connected with new friends and they tried new sports that in the past, because we were just a ball of sadness, they didn't have the confidence. Myself, going after jobs that I thought, I can do these. I can really, really apply myself to this. It felt real, when in the past I felt like I didn't have anything to offer.
One of our funded agencies says, "Thank you for your partnership. Your support enables us to provide critical services to our clients." In addition, we at Tempe Community Council say, "Thank you. This is possible because of the great city we live in and those who serve it."
Again, I want to thank you for your support for the year 2016-17 and obviously our current year. And I also want to, as Octavia mentioned, this takes a lot of community participation. Several of you have been involved in our process in the past in reviewing applications and making those decisions. But I also want to really thank a lot of our board members who are with us today. We have 6 or 7 of our board members: Tammy Reed, Mark Hultus, Christina Hudson, Dave Roberts, Dorothy Rasmussen and Chris Ravasi. I just really want to thank our board for being here and supporting, and Genevieve Vega. So thank you very much for your help and all you do to make this process work as well. And that's all we have. Any questions related to our AR process for 2016-17?
No, I just want to thank you, and I personally, I know my colleagues have sat on the agency review panel as well as served on Tempe Community Board, Community Council's board. It really is a testament to the values that we share as a city. Just hearing that testimonial just really, hammers at home how important it is that we are a caring community, and we always have been. And we're very fortunate to do so because we do have the resources. When we do have the resources to affect someone's life, we're able to put it to good use. And this is a perfect example of that. So thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, no, I definitely echo what the mayor said. So thank you guys for the presentation. I know how much you love coming up here, so thank you for doing that. And thank you to all the volunteers that spend countless hours, taking care of our community. It's much appreciated. I just have a couple questions on your presentation. When you guys have the number served and it says Tempeans, are those individuals or could that be a repeat person too?
They are
Like touches versus?
right. Those are
Okay.
unduplicated clients is what we ask for.
Oh, unduplicated. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was wondering. And then my other question would be, and I hate to think of it this way, but are there numbers of people that we weren't able to serve, or our agencies were not able to provide help to because maybe they had a waiting list or they weren't able to get to everybody? Do you guys keep those statistics at all?
It's a really excellent question. I think it's probably something we should consider. We have not been asking our agencies for that information, but a very good point that we could move forward with in the future.
Well, I think you guys do a fantastic job, and I'm really thrilled with the work and the volunteers. So thank you guys so very much for everything that you do.
I do want to add an asterisk. There are very few, the vast majority of the are unduplicated, but there's a couple, like Salvation Army in particular, that sometimes we don't know for a fact that that's unduplicated. But generally speaking, they are unduplicated numbers.
Councilman Keating?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo some comments and thank you for the work that you've done in our community and thank you for this presentation. You've quantified it for us here tonight, but I really think what you do in Tempe is probably immeasurable, and it would be impossible to imagine the city without TCC's contribution. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Cubie?
So I know Councilmember Granville and I have both sat on agency review many times, and
A lot of people on council
yeah,
probably, yeah.
and we've talked about this and how robust the process is, and it's become even more robust and data driven as well, and appreciate that. And this question or discussion is probably I'll sort of say something very briefly about it, but I think we need to talk about it in the community needs assessment, and it's about considering emergency rental assistance as part of the agency review process. We did put it in that process last year. I have a really difficult problem with it. I think that it's a basic safety net for the community, and it shouldn't be competing against all the other sort of pockets of projects that are coming forward. We know that 1 of every 10 of our emergency rental assistance requests is fulfilled. It's only 10%, and to have us decide, are we going to fulfill 10% of that, or 11%, or 12% through agency review? It doesn't seem appropriate. It seems like it should be a basic safety net issue that's more of a line item with the budget that we talk about in the budget process. So I just want to introduce that and maybe have a more robust discussion in the next, the community needs discussion we have.
May I say something to that?
Sure.
I understand both ways of looking at that. One of the things that I think is really critical, and one of the things we rely on greatly, as co-chair of the Agency Review Enhancement Committee, we are always trying to make the process go smoother. One of the things we rely on greatly is council input. And some years have been great for council input. Some years have not been great for council input. But our goal is to try to get as much input from all our stakeholders, and especially council, in order to accomplish that, and also to make sure then that with that information, then the appropriate weights that we give based on the priorities that have been set by the needs assessment and council's input, and the Human Services Department, can all be applied in order to make sure that those types of things are taken care of correctly.
Councilman Granville and Councilman Navarro?
So first of all, I don't disagree at all with Councilmember Kuby, because, and when we do have that discussion, I think one of the bits of information that would be helpful for that discussion is So you can help someone with a little bit of money when they're right at need, or you can help them with a lot more money when they're homeless, right? And it becomes it can become a more costly issue. And so I'd be curious to see that cost benefit analysis by front loading some of the assistance as a potential cost savings measure. The thing that obviously it's a great presentation. The thing that would be helpful for me, and I think we all probably get this feedback, is someone will have an experience either with someone that's homeless or someone who is a senior or whatever the case may be. And they'll send us an email, and the email will say two things. You don't do anything, and then we'll write back and we'll say, well, let me tell you about what we do through TC. And then the next thing is, you don't do enough. You should be funding my thing more than their thing. And if there's a way that we could have, that always frustrates me because it makes it seem like this $700,000 doesn't exist, right? That we're not doing anything because we don't have a shelter in the city. There's a good argument for a shelter, but point is, it's not that we're not doing anything. If you could provide something short and easy that we could say, look, here is what we do for each of the communities, and here is our process of weighting percentages of money. 15% goes to this population, 30% goes to this population. Right now, what we have is a very large document we can send people, and I think it would be helpful to have a very short document to say, look, if you think more money should go towards seniors, or you think more money should go towards the homeless, or you think more money should go towards an at-risk community, you need to be a part of TCC, and you need to be a part of these discussions, and you need to be a part of this weighting process. And so I think it does two things. One, I think it helps us explain to the community what we do and how we make those decisions, but I also think it gives us the ability to filter people into you when they think that the system is, rightly or wrongly, they think the system needs fixing. So just like a one page would be really helpful.
And it really does tie into our community needs assessment, which you'll hear about next, being one of those areas that we really need to educate our community and provide more information to our community about our human services. So.
No, I think that was a great point you touched on. I think the communication of that needs assessment, and so to evaluate it, to make sure that they have the information before they evaluate it, I think is huge. And I agree with Councilmember Kuby. I think there's always that need for the rental assistance, utility assistance, all those programs that keep our residents just, getting by just a little bit more so they can find that relief when they come with income or another job. You mentioned something about council input, and I was curious, when would be the appropriate time you would like to have council input? Prior, like month-wise, or at a retreat, or do you guys have like a timeline, or you know what I'm saying? I want to be able to have...
We have a timeline.
Yeah, so I want to be able to have that input at a time so you can go through your process and knowing what our input is.
In the past, we've come to you late spring with a kind of an update of services, getting ready for, in the last 2 years we have not done that, but previously we were coming to you at kind of late spring, talking about what we had done with the last year's process, and then moving into your requests and your priorities for the next year. I would say this would be a really good time to do it, and I know maybe you aren't prepared, but we could really entertain those ideas and comments by email throughout the year. But if that is an interest, we could certainly come back and make that a priority.
Yeah, and I think because of this conversation that always comes up every year about where the money's going to and how the money's going to and who we're serving and how we're serving, I kind of favor with probably more of a discussion possibly on that, so that we give you guys a decent direction and framework. Yeah, framework. It's not to say that that's how you're going to go, but the idea of where we're thinking money should go. I don't know if the other council feels the same way.
Councilman Shapiro.
Thank you, Mayor. Everything's been said, just hasn't been said by everyone, but I do want to say we are incredibly thankful for our staff's work that you're doing in the community. It's incredibly important. There was one thing that stood out to me in the presentation that I was a little surprised by, just because I know there's a need out there, and maybe we've just done such a good job in past years of meeting it, but the home improvements for disabled families or individuals, there were only 5, which I was just surprised the number of people that need ramps or lowered counters or lowered light switches or things like that. I was surprised at how low that number was. It seemed like it'd been maybe higher in the past. Is it just an indication of the fact that we've gotten to a lot of folks?
So the agency that actually submitted the request for funding for that, they actually only said they would be able to make these home improvements for 4 families. And so they were able to do it for 5.
Oh, okay.
But the limited amount of funding, that's what they asked
So
for.
it's a matter of funding, it's not a matter of demand.
Request, actually.
Oh, of the request. Gotcha.
If I'm not mistaken, Councilman, I think our housing office does a lot of those rehab pieces for disabled individuals as well. So I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but I know we do internally have that as a service through the city too.
So Mayor, I would just like to know, is there a sense of if the demand for it is higher? I mean, if there's a lot of individuals that are requesting that particular support and are not getting it because we've only been requesting a small number?
Again, I think the agency that was funded to do that, and those numbers you saw, only asked for that much money.
Yeah.
So it was based on their assessment of what their needs
What the demand
were.
was.
Or what their
Maybe they had more
capacity,
requests that they couldn't
possibly
fill.
their
Yeah, that's what I'm
capacity to
wondering.
serve, yeah.
Maybe you can find out how many requests.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there were unfulfilled requests. That's really my question.
Kind of goes
Just-
back to
just
that
because I
waiting
think it's
list
a-
again, doesn't it?
I just think that's a really critical item, because if you are, for example, in a wheelchair and you don't have a ramp to get out of your house, you're homebound. I mean, that is a critical issue for that individual. And so I'm just wondering if there were unfulfilled requests.
Well, part of this equation is that some of it's coming directly through your city services that you fund through, and then some of it's coming through agency review.
Right.
And we are working through this whole process, we're working closer and closer all the time. Maybe that's something we need to make sure that each side knows is going on. And those are the types of directions that we want from council.
And there's other avenues to help with some of that stuff. Vice Mayor and then Councilman Granville.
Yeah, just a really quick question, and before we have bigger discussion about the homeless conversation, and I think the preventative piece, do you have a breakdown of what those dollars amount were? Because I know it's like the 3,762 of the numbers served were the preventative piece, and then if you add up all the other ones that were action touches for homeless was like 1,630. So do you know if you have a dollar division of the prevention piece, the emergency dollars versus those that are already homeless that we're trying to assist?
We do have access to those numbers. We do not have them.
That's
but we can
good.
provide
That's
them.
perfect. That's great.
Councilman Granville.
I just have an easy thing. So this year, for the first time, the city has done a sort of how would you spend $100 rating system. I thought, for my own money, I guess pun intended in that case, I thought it was a really good system. And so I don't know if it's the right fit for you all, but if you would maybe just meet briefly with our city manager or someone that he designates to see if that same package of software could be retooled in a way that would either allow council or allow the public or allow constituents to sort of chime in on where they think that money should best be spent. And if it's not a fit for you, I won't be upset, but it's just a really nice system that we use this year.
I appreciate that thought. I think we also have so much data to analyze in our community needs assessment, which obviously is in front of you next, that our board is actually going into retreat. We just really need to spend some time about what does that needs assessment really say to us, and how are we going to drive that forward to create the priorities around our funding process.
So one of the things, just to be clear, because everyone's doing this individually, is there a way you can create a process for the council to give input? So it's not being done individually from one email to another email, that we can actually have a process how to do that?
That $100 system, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, this is something, if you could create a process, that would be helpful for us.
Okay.
So that way
We
we're
will
all on the
work on
same
that.
page,
Work on that, definitely.
so that we're all on the same page and we're moving, if that helps, because that way it'll help you.
Absolutely.
That's why I think the comeback.
Random comments.
Right, right.
And if I may respond to the rental assistance, I guess the only piece that I would want to offer there is that falls into crisis needs. And it's hard to know how to weigh an abused child against maybe a prevention piece that is rental assistance, or a domestic violence victim. I mean, it's really, those are very difficult decisions to make. And obviously that's a process that's driven by our volunteers, our community volunteers that make those decisions based on the quality of the application, the quality of their services, their historical perspective as well. But they're not easy decisions to make, whether you prevent homelessness, or you help a domestic violence victim, or you help a child that's been abused. So we have a lot of priorities.
Again, I just want to thank you for what you do, and thank the board and all the volunteers, because Tempe wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for not only our residents, but the volunteers that we have and the great nonprofits that we have in our community, and as well as our city staff. So thank you to all of you. And I know the next item is going to be a little more in depth, but thank you.
Thank you for the increased funding for our current year. So we are very
And
appreciative
just curious,
of that as well.
You know, just one of the points my colleagues, Councilman Granville made was, okay, these people may not be doing, what are you guys doing to help me out or help this certain agency out or this certain area? I don't know of any other city, and I could be completely wrong, that has a line item in their general budget like we do. I don't know of any other city, and like I said, I could be wrong, but I would like to know how we stack up compared to other communities where we actually have a line item right out of our general fund to help with human services. And the fact that the way we do it and go about doing it, and the fact that we have all the different nonprofits that really help close that gap from everything from all the different organizations that we interact with. I think that's something that it'd be good, curious to know, some memo or Friday packet for the council, just to reinforce everything that we're doing.
Excellent process, and we're proud to be a part of it.
Yes, Councilman Keeley.
Just one clarification. Councilmember Granville, you mentioned the spending of the $100 budget, and we did that as council. It is available to the community. 5 people did it, so not a lot of people did it, but it is available as a tool for community members to use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item is the Community Council's Community Needs Assessment for 2017. I know we have Ms. Clean coming forward. Let me get to my calendar, or my closed on me.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll go from here. Valerie.
Mayor and Council, thank you very much again for your time today. We're taking a little bit of your agenda. I don't think I'd introduced myself previously, but I'm Valerie Kime-Trujillo. I am a Deputy Human Services Director. I serve at Tempe Community Council, and it's just our real pride today to bring forward to you the 2017 Tempe Community Needs Assessment. You've got this document, it's 152 pages, it's a lot of information, and with me today to really provide that information, I have the chair of our Tempe Community Council Board, Elizabeth Kling, and I have our past chair of our Tempe Community Council Board, Pastor Chris Gonzalez, who will move forward with the results from our needs assessment.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tempe Community Council set out to conduct this community needs assessment as a community effort. So we are very, very thankful for the efforts and the support from the faith community, Pastor Chris's church, Missio Dei communities, as well as Guardian Angels community, Redemption Church Tempe, and Temple Emmanuel of Tempe. We were also able to get a generous grant from the Tempe Community Foundation Endowment. So with those efforts, we were able to acquire the services of I&E Consulting. So Dr. Lisa Williams and Dr. Lisa Armijo Zarita, who is here today with us, conducted the community needs assessment.
So why we're here before you today, one, obviously it's a large document with a lot of information, so we want to inform you as council. We want to highlight Tempe's most critical human service needs. So there's many good things, but there are some needs that obviously still there. And then we do want to keep our presentation short to be able to gather your feedback as well. So why the assessment was conducted, a few things. One, to obtain current information on Tempe human service needs, so to get a lay of the land and see where are we. Second is to provide Tempe Community Council and the community with relevant data to guide future planning. So really the assessment looked at both strengths and gaps, and so we'll see both of those in here. And then third, to assist in determining priorities for human service funding.
So the data collection process for the community needs assessment was exhaustive. Tempe Community Council hosted 6 different roundtables with 99 different agencies participating. An additional 12 assessment-specific meetings were held for 198 participants. Focus groups were held, focused on the needs of our community for those both needing as well as receiving needing and receiving those services. Those 172 different participants. 292 proctored in-depth in-person surveys were done. An additional 184 were done online. 26 key stakeholder interviews were held. And the final piece of the data collection was our public forum, in which 90 different people from the community, including members of council, attended. And through that, we were able to get feedback from over 1,000 different participants.
So some of the strengths of the city of Tempe. Sorry. So a few strengths. One is people who care and committed to helping those in need. So no surprise that in Tempe, the biggest strength that we want to highlight first is that there's a ton of people who really care and are serving and volunteering in numerous ways. Second is the availability of services to meet diverse human service needs, and that's something unique about Tempe as well, is the diversity of the needs that we serve. Not just one specific area. There's preventative services and safety net to meet basic needs. And then fourth, transportation services. So we have lots of resources, but there's also access to these resources, some that Tempe has for it. And then Mayor, specifically something that you just referred to and asked about, but here's a stat that is on page 19 of the report. The per capita spending on human services in Tempe is $85 per capita. The next highest city in the East Valley is $65 per capita.
Oh, yeah.
So from 85 to
Is
60,
that?
85 to 65 is the second Scottsdale.
Scottsdale.
Yep.
And I wouldn't know the difference in population.
No way.
No, I mean, it's, yeah. We're 180,000. Scottsdale's what, 240? 2 and a quarter, are they?
246.
45.
Thank you.
So, yeah. One of the things that we asked our consultants to do was to, first of all, address the needs, both the needs that we're meeting as well the gaps in service for our 6 identified populations. But we also asked them to be aware of and to look for if there are additional groups who are in need of services. And throughout their interviews, their data collection, one of the things that became very clear is that there's an emerging critical need for us to address the needs of individuals with mental health, substance abuse, and or health care treatment needs. And it's real easy to imagine the breadth and the scope of those different needs, and to see that those needs are going to cover all 6 of our different target populations.
So then this slide, you'll see the 6 population areas that Tempe Community Council and the agency review commonly looks at, as looked at for the last several years. Above that, you will see this new area of mental health, substance abuse, and healthcare treatment needs that Elizabeth just talked about being introduced. But these are the 6 different areas and ranked by critical need for added services per population. Now, something that Councilmember Granville, you referred to, was this isn't, we want to rob from one to give to another and give, but the question that was asked, and it's important to see this, the question was which population needs the most additional services? So it's not to say one needs less services to give to another one, but it's to say, hey, these are all getting services, but which ones are in need of the most additional? And so homeless, individuals and families ranking at the top of that one.
So amongst our 6 original target populations, as well as this new emerging group, there were universal priorities that were identified. These are needs that are common to everybody within our community. That includes affordable and accessible housing, safe shelter, basic needs services, as well as a complete care system for economically disadvantaged individuals, including multilingual access, a holistic, individualized case management with a single navigator, flexible funding options for providers to meet the needs of these individuals, a need to provide jobs at livable wages, particularly with preference for hiring Tempe residents. And finally, as we've already mentioned, the access to services for mental health, substance abuse, and health care needs.
So the 6 different population groups, we just want to walk through those with a few facts, challenges, strengths, and needs for each of them. So the first one, homeless individuals and families. I just draw your attention to the first fact that there are 629 unduplicated, unsheltered homeless individuals done by the city's interdepartmental study. So there's a significant amount of homeless neighbors that we have in our Tempe community. one of the strengths that many of the homeless individuals identified was availability of food and clothing. And so really great to hear that some of the basic crisis needs are met there. But one of the needs, the second to last one, and this was one of the universal needs across all the groups, is that case management. And so there is some case management. iHealth, TCAA with iHealth has started some case management, but seeing there just a continued increased need for that as the causes of homelessness and the things that keep people in homelessness are so diverse.
What are we doing? I know we have the population is increasing. You say 629. We do a homeless count. How often do we do that?
Annually.
Annually. And then from that homeless count, how do we determine, obviously, who is Tempe homeless versus who's just coming in from the outside visiting, so to speak? What's the challenges with that, I guess?
We're probably not the best. We have obviously a homeless solutions coordinator for our city, but just taking a stab at that, the bottom line is we know homeless are transient, but I think we have found in Tempe, a lot of our homeless are very stable in Tempe, but those are broken out on this mid-year study that was done. The actual point in time count is done the last of January every year. I think our numbers were in the almost 300 range. But when this was actually done and staff were hired to go out and really comb the community and see what was happening, we found twice that many individuals.
This is important to Councilman Navarro mentioned because it is transient. To the question of who are they Tempe residents? Well, it's a regional issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and believe me, my colleagues in the other cities understand it's a regional issue, and I would love to see if we could present this information to a future MAG meeting, because there is a committee at MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, where we can make sure that we can say, here's the data we've collected, this is the information we're looking at, our needs assessment, this is what we're looking at, what is it like we should push the envelope with the other cities to help get them on board to say, hey, this is a regional, and it is. I've spoken with Mayor Giles. I've spoken with our supervisor, Denny Barney. We're looking at ways to be collaborative, what we could do to help with the transient population. I mean, the fact that we have a light rail, we have a no-cost neighborhood circulator in and around our city. And I often say Tempe is a city of choice. It's a choice for many reasons. Some mentioned that the assessment that you looked at, some of the strengths is that, the strength says that availability for food, clothing, and shower facilities within our community. That gets out, and people know where to go. It's safe in our community. They know that they get certain services for us and the basic needs. So it's gonna happen, and that's where all the transient, opportunities come from. As a transient-oriented population that are homeless, they would come here. The bigger issue, and I know David can talk a little bit about this, is the mental health issue. This is something we really need, and I know something's being done. Thanks to Councilman Joe Navarro with the lead on the opioid. But it's a bigger issue, and I think we're seeing it nationally. We need help at the state level for the mental health issues. It's always been underfunded. It's been for years. So if there's a way that we can work through MAG and through our other partners, colleagues throughout the valley, I think that'd be really, really helpful. Because instead of just us doing it, it's a regional issue. So that's what I would recommend.
So the point in time count is annual. It's done across, as you know, across the country. Maricopa County kind of sets the rules and the guidelines, and so we're trying to. It's still a point in time. It's very useful, but there some limitations to it. But our homeless coordinator Kim Van Wigan has arranged to have part of the count be on the light rail itself. There will be people stationed on the light rail, interviewing and surveying folks. And I know they still need some volunteers. We have a hefty 75 people volunteered already to help out, and that's happening on January 23rd in Tempe. And it's so important that we have a robust count this year, because it determines how much money we get from the federal government for homeless services.
And if I may respond to the substance abuse and mental health, our Tempe Coalition is partnering very closely with the Gilbert Chandler Coalition, and obviously we're participating with the Councilman Navarro's opioid task force as well. And I have also been participating and have gone to some of the mental health meetings that Gilbert has been putting together, and just kind of looking at watching what they're doing, because we know that that is a serious issue, and now it's obviously really surfaced in our community needs assessment. So there's ongoing efforts to partner regionally and on the East Valley, but it needs a lot of attention.
And,
Councilman Navarro?
and just to be with that, the collaboration with not only just with what you guys are doing, but with the CARE 7s, the CR vans, but also the fire departments, because they are the first touches, and PD with the mental health crisis and having those coordinations, working all together.
Sorry to interrupt.
Perfectly fine. When you look at the population affected by domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking, we're all aware that this is something that touches many, many families. However, when you look at the reports received by Tempe PD, they take an estimated 72 domestic violence calls per week. And that is a small number compared to what actually takes place, because this is a very underreported statistic due to the fear that victims have of repercussions if they do report it. However, one of the strengths that was pointed out repeatedly was the fact that CARE 7 is there and they are addressing the needs of these individuals using the approaches of trauma-informed care. The greatest need that was identified for individuals experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking was we need to provide a quicker response to safe, and the key here is non-separated housing families. We need to be able to keep these families together in a safe location.
Next, individuals with disabilities and special needs. And this is the first challenge you'll see there is that this is a population that's frequently overlooked, and that's not just here in Tempe, but that's universally. And it's a huge population as well. Notice that first fact, there's over 14,000 Tempeans who live every day with a disability. And so, and then of the strengths, notice how many organizations that there are in this commonly overlooked group. Notice how many organizations and groups there are that are working towards it, from CARE 7, Patient Advocacy Services, Tempe Schools, Gracie's Village, Ability 360s, Centers for Rehabilitation, and Tempe Neighbors Helping Neighbors.
Another often overlooked population is working poor. The statistics for Tempe are a little bit staggering. Over 21% of our residents live below the poverty level. That's more than 38,000 individuals. These individuals are living paycheck to paycheck, and they are at risk of crisis if something as simple as a car breaks down, or they're making decisions every day about, do I pay my mortgage, or do I pay for the utilities, or do I put food on the table for my families? One of the things that we did learn, though, is that food is plentiful. People in Tempe have said, and there's a quote in the community needs assessment, that if you live in Tempe and you're hungry, it's because you don't know where to ask for the food, that it's out there if you need it. One of the things that is needed for this population, however, and we've already touched on this basically, is the need for basic needs and preventative emergency assistance, as well as safe and affordable housing.
I think you could make an argument that maybe some of the most lonely individuals, neighbors of ours here in Tempe are seniors who lack transportation, lack other opportunities, and maybe family around. And so loneliness is a huge issue for seniors, isolation, and the reality that it is a growing population. And so a couple of the strengths are Tempe Neighbors Helping Neighbors, grassroots, homegrown organization here in Tempe, and then also TCA with the home delivered meals. I got the opportunity to go last month and do a ride along with the Meals on Wheels program with TCA, and it's fantastic the work that they're doing.
So historically, the city of Tempe has always done an exceptional job of meeting the needs of our youth. One of the things that was surprising to me to learn is that we have 280 homeless students within our public school system under the McKinney-Vento program. So these children, even though we've reached out to them, still continue to have a lot of needs. We've done a lot to meet those needs. We have in-school prevention counselors through CARE 7. We have, thanks to council, our new Tempe pre-program. So we are reaching out to do a lot to help them. Go ahead.
No,
Okay, that's all right. One of the key things so that we have come to understand about this population is both the caregivers as well as the children lack an awareness of the resources that are available. And one of the things that they need, that they have asked for, is, again, mental health support as well as substance abuse support. In closing with our populations, it is important to remember that when we talk about 6 different populations, many of our individuals fall into multiple categories at the same time. We have children who live in working poor. We have multi-generational families that are experiencing domestic violence. And so it's not possible to look at our communities and to put them in silos. We have to understand the complexities of their needs and to understand that many of our individuals fall within multiple populations.
Councilman Navarro?
Just real quick on the school-age children that we provide services for, are we counting them because they go to Tempe schools? And if so, if they live in Phoenix and come to Tempe schools, do we get reimbursement from Phoenix, or do we have a relationship with Phoenix because we're helping their families? Is there any explanation on that, or does that touch matter?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think is Raymond in the audience. I do not know that. I'm
Chris Bush
assuming.
is here. It's Tempe residents, so I know we have Phoenix kids, but Phoenix will handle that.
Sorry.
So then that brings us to the work that we have to do from here. That's an overview of some of the different populations, but then the community needs assessment ends with 20 recommendations that will take some time to chew over the coming weeks and months. Tempe Community Council, their board is, as well as no doubt you all and city staff will as well. So here are the some of the 20 recommendations that are, Valerie's done a good job of grouping them into 4 of the 5 of your council's strategic priorities. So here's 4 of the strategic priorities with the different, just a brief little bit on each of the recommendations. And I just draw your attention quickly to the last one, strong community connections, and a couple things that bear mentioning here. The first one, partnerships with schools, colleges, faith community, and nonprofits. And just to see this right here, so it's the faith community, a nonprofit, and local city government all working together in this endeavor right here. And then another one is awareness of all human services resources. And that was a recommendation that came out of this, that there needs to be an awareness both for the people who are using these resources, but also for all Tempe community members to know what are the resources that are available for so many different people. And that comes in some of the communication gathering that you all were talking about during the previous presentation.
And just to give you a little flavor, obviously there's many of these things in the works in addressing some of the needs in the needs assessment that have come before you, or the tenant-based rental housing that has just been unveiled and is new to our housing, our human services housing department, the bridge to permanency with the serious mental SMI population for housing, our Family Justice Commission and their interest in a family advocacy center, the dementia-friendly initiative that our mayor leads, our homeless coalition and solutions, the Tempe Works in partnership with our Public Works Department and TCAA, our Carrier 7, all of the work that they do from crisis to case management, and really our ongoing population work. And we are really moving a lot of that forward with our funded agencies to create more awareness around, more effort around collective impact, and then working toward a care fair, which will happen in on April 21st of this year at the library, in both getting all of our nonprofits out, all of our city services out, as well as and getting those services in front of our residents, both for whether they need those services or if they would want to volunteer and mobilize our community to be more involved in those services.
So TCC received this community needs assessment on October 31st of 2017. And as you've all seen, there's a lot of data and a lot of information to digest in that. However, we have already started taking steps to determine how TCC is going to use and implement this information. So the agency review process opened up on December 18th, and nonprofits who are applying for funding this year are going to be seeing some new questions. They are going to be asked, does your agency serve individuals with mental health, substance abuse, and/or health treatment needs? And if so, how does the agency provide for or coordinate the client's access to those services? So that is our first step in the data gathering. In addition, the Tempe Community Foundation has decided that their contribution to the grant process is going to be focused on innovative projects related to mental health, substance abuse, and/or healthcare treatment. Moving forward, besides what we're already doing, Tempe Community Council has a retreat scheduled on January 26th, where we are really going to sit down and go through the recommendations for this community needs assessment to determine how these recommendations match up with our strategic plan, as well as looking at the city's strategic plan. We're going to be looking at which of those recommendations fit TCC, what we should be working on. We're going to be looking at what is already going on and what we need to reach out to our other nonprofit partners to decide who needs to take responsibility for these different action items. So what we're looking at is coordinating amongst the city, TCC, as well as the other nonprofits, and deciding how are we going to move forward with this information that we've gathered. So a big part of this that we're looking at is going to be determining for the 2019-20 agency review process what is going to be our focus and our priorities. And as we already mentioned in our last presentation, hopefully that will also be feedback from council as far as what your priorities are going to be. So the mission of Tempe Community Council is connecting those in need with those who care. That was really our purpose in conducting this community needs assessment, is to be able to use for ourselves as well as the community as a whole this as a tool for the community to find creative and effective ways to meet the needs of the city's most vulnerable residents.
That concludes our presentation. There is a lot of information, but we are here to answer whatever questions you may have.
And again, I think that we should really take this on the road with MAG and let our other cities know. Because this is, to me, this is great work, and this is something that I think a lot of communities could look at, and we could be, obviously we are a leader in many parts of the city and nationwide, but this is another example that we can truly work in a regional manner to help maybe take what we've done here, but help have MAG work with us looking at community assessment needs for the region when it comes to services and how we get to those points. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this. I really do appreciate everything that you've done. I think this really is a testament to our core values and the strategic priorities that we have as a council. So I want to thank you so much for what you have done. I know we have a lot of questions. So.
And Mayor, if I may, on that note, our consultants, both Dr. Armijo and Dr. Williams, actually were the consultants that conducted the needs assessment for both Gilbert and Chandler. And we looked at that very closely when we selected them to do Tempe. So this needs assessment mirrors both Gilbert and Chandler. So that is already done.
Which we're all part of MAG, which
Right,
is even more important. Okay. Councilman Navarro?
So, Mayor, thank you, and I totally agree with that, because I think the regional cooperation is huge, especially, and I think you mentioned with the duplication of efforts. So we're coordinating and making sure that there is one entity, and so we know where to place our money. We know where the resources are at, and then to boot with that, once again, I think it's always out there, is the communication of those resources and how we effectively guide people to those resources. So I think those are big things that help as a region, so that we're not competing, so to speak, and we're working together.
Chris, you mentioned earlier, what was it, the numbers, $85 versus 65 or 60?
That's on page 19. So I believe it's $85 per capita that Tempe spends on human services.
So about 30% more than
65 in Scott, and I think the lowest one on the list is $5.
Can you tell us who that person is?
2014.
No, but my point is, the point is, if you look at, you break off the needs, the strengths, and everything that we have that you've done before, we're based on those numbers, we're 34% more per person that we spend on individual community, human services needs than the next surrounding community. That says something. I mean, that means that if I'm in need of assistance, we're going to be looking at certain ways to help my family or my individual. That's why, I mean, it just shows that Tempe is a caring community. So that's something that's, I think, that should not go unnoticed. Anybody else have any questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I would just say, wow, this is really incredible, a lot of great data and information, and I can't thank the 1,000 people that took the time and all the volunteers that took the time to go out there and do the work, because I think this is a really incredible tool. And I mean, it's kind of really hard to have a lot of discussion, because I feel like you guys still need to digest it even a little bit more and come back to us and let us know what it is that you want to prioritize and how you want to prioritize it and how that fits into agency review. And 100% I respect that and feel that you're going to do a really fantastic job on that too. And I guess, the one thing that the mayor said is, if we were providing a lot of really great services, it's really important to know not only the people that we're touching, but the people that we're impacting to change their situation And so we had the earlier presentation with the numbers that we've actually had an impact with, but then maybe there are the numbers of the ones that continually to utilize the service, but we haven't really been able to touch and make a change in their life too. So, I mean, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work that you, the three of you here, and then your team behind you, and have really put into this, because I know it's been a labor of love. But just know that I think this is a fantastic tool, and I think the city will be able to utilize it too. And it's perfect timing as we go through our budget discussions in the next couple of months too. So, I can't thank you guys enough.
And Vice Mayor, I really want to recognize again Dr. Lisa Zarita Armijo, who has been with us, and really it was her and Dr. Williams that did most of the legwork. It was two of them. They covered a lot of territory, did a lot of amazing work, and unfortunately Dr. Williams had a death in her family, so she could not be with us today, but I thank Dr. Zarita for being here.
Thank you. Everybody else? Councilman Cubey.
Yeah, thanks again, like everyone has said, for all this amazing work. And just want to mention on this slide involving our priority areas and the assessment recommendations, I would urge you, perhaps next year to include the sustainability priority area, because I know you know that sustainability is not just about wastewater energy, but there are definitely deep connections with our human services and sustainability. I think about the free pre-K program. I think about resilience, the whole resilience. We're having a whole movement in our Office of Sustainability in Tempe here about resilience and talking about trying to build more resilience with extreme heat and drought, and that has a lot of ramifications. Usually the most vulnerable populations are the most impacted by extreme heat and drought. So I urge us also to not leave that one off the equation, because I think there's a lot of cross-cutting measures there.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Big item. Mr. Iverson, 5th Street calming.
Well, I have just a question we talk about.
They haven't even digested what they want to do with it yet. I say let them go do it. Let them pick it.
Let you come back.
Because maybe they'll want to do something else.
Yeah.
Really good job.
What's that?
Better be good.
Let's hope so. It has to be quick too, I think. It's a long night.
No, I like the
Talk
options.
slow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I'm Eric Iverson, Transportation. I'm here with
Julian Dreesang, City Tempe Traffic Engineer.
And before we get into the presentation, just wanted to mention that we do have our traffic consultant here in the room, Don Cartier with CivTech, to answer any specific questions you might have about some of the traffic decisions that we're asking of you tonight. And just also wanted to call out our transportation planner on this project, Tony Blue, who's also here. And he can answer questions too if he wants. So these are the items that we wanted to cover tonight. As you know, we have been to you before on this project. We are specifically bringing back some of the traffic decisions that we wanted to get the council to provide direction on at 5 of the 6 intersections that are along the street. This project meets a lot of, we think, the performance measures and strategic priorities that the council has established. So we're listing those here. I won't go through them, but we think this project is multifaceted and does address many of those. And as you all know, the project limits are on 5th Street from College Avenue over on the east side, connecting to ASU and Sun Devil Stadium area, and then connecting on the west side to our neighborhoods, some of our oldest neighborhoods, Riverside, Sunset, and others. And then in between, of course, there's a tremendous street with civic functions and 2 parks, connections to Hayden Butte, and a street that's evolving. There's redevelopment, there's historic structures, and there's folks living on the street now that we did not previously have for many years. So an important street. And then a little bit of history. As you all know, we shared this at the last couple of times we presented as to why we got to this point on this project. Really kind of emerged out of our the downtown parking study that was completed in 2015 to kind of look at solutions in and around the downtown, especially on streets like this that had some maybe extra width where you could add some short-term temporary parking instead of structured parking. We did through 2016 and a lot of 2017 work with the design team that we hired, Collective, they're identified here. We had a series of public meetings. We went to many
of our boards and commissions that I'll go through in the next slide. And we also did present to you in the springtime of 2017 on April 6th to get some direction on the baseline design concept that we had developed. We did do a test phase of some of the design treatments that we had established in that baseline design. And then we are here tonight again to get direction on some of the traffic solutions that are possible at the intersections. We also just want to mention, of course, this has gone through many of our boards and commissions, but this has been a really a new partnership of the Sustainability Commission, the Transportation Commission. Obviously, the Transportation Commission has seen these projects over the last 20, 25 years. We did a really good partnership with the Sustainability Commission, including a joint meeting, 2 joint meetings, maybe just 1, and to really get our street system to look at how we can advance sustainability in our transportation system as we go forward in the community. And then finally, I know there's a lot of information on this slide. Finally, we do have, we're looking at the design of the street. There is a waterline project that's programmed on the street. There's also pavement management or resurfacing the street that's programmed. So those funded projects are moving forward. We wanted to have the design of the street organized and established before we did all that work. So all that work happened at one time. Oh. It's not advancing. There we go. A little bit more on the community outreach, and again, you all have heard this at the last presentation. This is pretty normal for our transportation projects. We did reach out to all the boards and commissions listed here 3 times over the last year and a half. We've been giving updates to them and getting feedback from them. We did also coordinate with many different departments because obviously this affects many different areas of the city. We did postcard notification of the public meetings as well as the council meeting and the test phase in 2016 and 2017 to let neighbors know that they could weigh in on the project. So we did receive comments online, phone, and emails. Those are verbatim in your packet. So all the comments that we received over those couple phases of public input are in your packet. And then of course we did go through working with all the stakeholders, property owners that are on the street itself, because there's a diverse group of representation there of properties, and we wanted to make sure that we were working with them to coordinate and get the best project design to advance. So using all that input that we have received from all those different stakeholders and the public, we have established these set of goals for guiding the design of the project. A lot of these are pretty normal for a street project in Tempe, things like wanting to give mobility for everyone on the street, so giving transportation access for all types of users. But then specifically with this project, we wanted to look at again, getting back to the parking study, some of the short-term on-street parking options that could be feasible. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at the long-term sustainability of the street, making sure that the long-term, any utility needs in the street, that those were also being addressed and we preserve those opportunities into the future. And then getting back to this partnership with sustainability and transportation, we did establish 2 specific goals in addition to all those transportation goals, 2 specific goals of sustainability of achieving a 25% tree canopy coverage of the street, and then also designing the street so that the 100% of rainfall that falls on the street is captured and goes into those landscape areas and maximizes the performance of those botanicals. So this is the concept that you all had seen in the spring of 2017. This is the concept that we also did a test phase in September of. We've been referring to this as our baseline concept. It does all those goals that I talked about in the previous slide, and then some of the specific treatments that this design concept does is it provides a complete and total upgrade of our ADA compliance in the city. So it kind of is partnered with our ADA transition plan and that project that you all have been aware of that's moving forward. It does, depending upon the solutions that you choose, it increases the on-street parking options, that short-term parking, from anywhere between 41 and 68 new total stalls on the street. I think we're somewhere in the 30s today on on-street parking.
I'm sorry, so it increases, all 3 options increases it up?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so so the lower option would be 41. Right. And so we are providing more pedestrian crossings with the street. As you know, it's a strong pedestrian corridor, so providing pedestrian crossings was important. Enhanced bike lanes, enhanced transit facilities. We are looking at this special place in front of City Hall, as we've shared before. So all the options do provide for that special treatment in front of City Hall, again, providing the increased shade and landscaping throughout the entire project and shooting for that 25% coverage of the shade canopy. The water harvesting goals, creating 4 gateway treatments, 2 at the ends and 2 in the middle of the project. Those are sort of more grand treatments along the project. And then finally, we are still providing, as we've mentioned before, the 2 public restrooms as part of this project that would be adjacent to City Hall on the east side of City Hall. I'm sorry, west side of City Hall is what we're proposing in this project, and that's attached to that experimental landscape area, the edible kind of possible ASU adopted landscape area.
You said edible.
Yeah, possible edible Sonoran desert palette edibles like, pardon? Yeah. Well, pomegranates, yeah.
Edible.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I said edible desert products. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. So that is still in the project as was previously identified.
You're easily entertained.
Yeah, not well. So before we get into the traffic solution, we just want to remind you all that all the design treatments that we have previously talked about, all those great things that come with these streetscape projects that we've done around the community, those are still part of the project, no matter which traffic solutions you choose. Obviously, some of the pedestrian spaces and some of the tree and parking amenities, those would decrease with any increase in traffic capacity that you choose to add with the project. And then a lot of the design treatments, we just want to, and I will mention this later, but we're looking at the intersections tonight and the capacity of our intersections. That's really, as you've learned over the years, that's really where you get a lot of your traffic movement. That's where you want to clear those intersections out. It's those sections between the intersections where we have a little bit of excess space and we have a center turn lane, doesn't turn into anything. That's where we're gaining a lot of that additional landscape and parking spaces. So those center turn lanes in some of those mid-block areas is where we are gaining some of that pedestrian and other shade amenities. So getting into the traffic questions that we have before you tonight, we essentially are offering you at all of the 6 intersections a range of options for you to choose. And we have sort of the baseline solution, which is the one that we shared with you last spring and is the one that we tested. And then there's a sort of a middle solution that we're indicating as B here that preserves, and I'm generalizing here, each one is a little bit specific, but the B solution is one that really preserves all your dedicated left turn lanes at the intersection. So it basically keeps the capacity of the street kind of at what you have today. And in the C option, we are providing a little bit additional capacity, and you'll see this in the numbers. We're providing a little bit of additional capacity or growth possibility for the council to consider tonight. And then with each one of those, with the A and the B and the C option, there are a number of trees, total number of trees, and a total number of parking spaces that you would get with each one of those treatments. So essentially, as you go with a more aggressive traffic solution, you would get, there would be a corresponding decrease in the trees and the parking stalls. Again, all those design treatments that I talked about earlier, those would still be in this project, but you would have a little bit of a reduction in some of those other amenities. Yes, Councilor.
These are back-in parking spaces, right?
Correct. These are we're talking angled parking, and it's a reverse-in angled parking,
right.
yeah, which statistically has been proven safer.
That's cool.
So, and I also just want to emphasize, we did, as we heard through feedback from the council and through the community, that we did modeling to look to generate these traffic solutions at the intersections. We did modeling out to 2040 using the same model that the ASU Tempe's small area plan and the big ideas that came out of that. That's the same model that we use, working with the same team. So we feel really comfortable with the traffic numbers that we are providing for you tonight to make a good decision on those intersections. Any questions on that before we go into the specific treatments? Okay. So again, with each of the intersections, we're providing with you what we think are all the options available to you. And some intersections have more room to grow than others. At Farmer, we'll start on the west end. So at the Farmer end, we really are providing the baseline solution here, which is roughly where you're at today. It's essentially a collector street meeting with a local street. And the B option here is where you're introducing a dedicated left turn lane. So that's the difference in the two treatments here. To orient you with the rest of the numbers on the page here, we're showing and this will be for all the subsequent intersections, we are showing the red number here is what your current traffic conditions are. That's the current number of vehicles traveling through that intersection on a daily basis. And then we're looking at a 2040 volume. Again, this is, we project out to the densities that are permitted and some of the information that's in our general plan and what we project to be going through that intersection by 2040. We're providing that number here as well. So this one isn't showing a lot of growth. And then we're also showing with each option how much traffic can go through that intersection if you're at a really congested level, how much can go through that intersection on a daily basis. So that's what the bar is. So that max capacity is really... Okay, there you go. So we are seeking direction, and then each one, that's great, we can move on to the next one, but so with each one we're showing your corresponding parking if it's available, and then the number of trees as well. So we'll take that note, Council Vice Mayor.
Yeah.
What's that? Sure,
Yeah.
however you would like to do it.
An A to B treatment, there's another slide.
Well, no.
No, this is for
No.
farmer,
This is
easy
for
route.
farmer.
One is, yeah.
For this intersection, yeah, I mean, anybody else?
I'm on B, yeah.
I think a lot of people are B.
Okay.
And just for clarity, these intersections at Farmer and College are gateway type intersections, so you
Correct.
get a more, okay.
And we feel that, again, we can accommodate all those other aesthetic treatments and those really enhanced, like tree and shade goals with each of these options. We
We're
are
both producing the same amount
and
of trees.
you can mix and match solutions so that, and we can make it all work for the half mile of the street.
Which one I'm gonna pick on Ash.
Okay.
No, they're not.
Ash, I don't know, I'm torn on Ash.
So Ash, Ash is already at basically
Oh,
a
that's
build-out
good. Hey.
solution. We're providing all the access that you have today.
Yeah, clarify. I just want to clarify something.
Yeah.
We're having a little bit of a tiff here.
Okay.
So no, the trees that are on the farmer section, they're not necessarily palm trees, right? We're looking
We are proposing palms. Now, we went into detail. So I
You
just
need to
want to
talk to her. She
clarify.
doesn't know she's talking about palms are great. Go.
We are in one of the.
looking to
You can see in
maximize
the-
shade, not just.
There's.
And I can- Yeah.
So the palms are, there's several reasons to introduce the palms. One is they do exist in the downtown, and I know we did receive a comment from you, Councilmember Granville, in the April meeting.
Provide fruit or shade?
Well, the date palms do provide fruit, but we do, so we will take that into
Fertilize
consideration.
them yourself.
They do provide a certain,
Grandiose.
yes, they do provide a certain gateway. And then if you look at the visual here, we're looking at ways in which we can intersperse those shade trees underneath the height of those palm trees to really maximize it. And then we're clustering the palms. Can achieve some shade. Correct.
Oh, yeah.
And it is where the lighting would be attached, that overhead lighting that we're talking about.
I'm just I have a little bit of a wry smile because, I mean, we know that, I'm talking to Bonnie Richardson, that the palm trees aren't even included in the shade tree canopy studies because they create such insignificant shade. If you're assuring me that there'll be other trees underneath, okay, but we need to really build a canopy here. And I think we've had some regrets about the amount of palms in our downtown area.
So one of the things we can do is that if you're comfortable with this solution is if we cannot fit in those shade trees between the palm trees, then we'll look at a different tree at those gateways. But if we can fit the additional trees underneath that story of the palm trees, then we would advance that. But we will come back to you if we can't achieve the. What's that?
It's just opinions.
No, that's fine.
Doesn't mean that
That's
we're-
good, that's okay, it's okay, we're good.
And I will say too, that, at those intersections, that's where people are crossing, that's where they're waiting, so that is where you'd want shade. That's where you might actually be stopped for a little while to cross the street. So it is an important point. So Ash Avenue, yes, A would be your option. I said there was five intersections that we had proposals on.
One option, that's it.
So Maple is one of the areas where we have a lot of room. It's a smaller street, Maple, a smaller street that on both north and south sides of it connects back to Mill Avenue. There has been a certain amount of density south of there that has come in. So we are providing three options here. Again, they're with graduating intensity for vehicle access. The A option is really our baseline option, excuse me, and then the B option is where you are providing those dedicated left turn lanes that are out there today. And then the C option is where you're continue to provide those left turns, but you're also providing a dedicated right turn lane, which does not exist today. And you can see the range of
Well, I guess the question I would ask you though, it would, to me, it would depend on what we do on Third. Yeah, because there was options of, are we reopening Third? Are we not reopening Third?
So Third is now, through a private development project, reopened westbound to southbound. There wasn't enough room to do that
I mean,
northbound
are we
to
taking out
eastbound.
the fountain?
It's gone, it's open,
It's already
yeah.
open right now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
as of, it's about 6 weeks now.
Okay, so, so people will be using that, okay.
Westbound to southbound only. There was only enough room to fit a one-way street, so there's not northbound to eastbound currently.
So it's northbound to southbound, so you can't turn left to go north?
Correct. The only
I mean,
access.
you can, but, okay.
The only thing that you can access going north currently is the parking garage structure.
Oh.
I am.
In Hackett House.
All right.
I'm okay with A.
Also with this one,
Yeah.
we want to say with some of those C options that you'll see in other
We gotta move the
design
traffic.
possibilities,
With all
the
those
C option
developments going in?
could be introduced later, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, if, you know, you would have to, you know, remove parking or remove some trees to make that right turn pocket. The design of these doesn't preclude you adding a right turn at a later date if you chose.
With that being said, Mayor, that's why I look at option A, because it provides more parking. For now, it provides more tree coverage. And then if the possibility, if we do have to construct a left or right turn lane, just taking out that one or two portions of it, we can achieve that. Because it provides the shade and provides the parking.
But man, I'm just worried about moving traffic, and I think we're just gonna continue to get more traffic.
As long as there's
So-
one.
The B option is-
Can we compromise with B?
Well, I'm just saying, at this intersection, I just see it as not such a high impact intersection. I would also argue, I wouldn't want a lot of traffic going down either Maple, either north or south.
But it already is today.
I think B, I'm fine with B.
C, I'm a C.
I'd prefer C, but.
What do you think? Because you're the traffic engineer on this one. What is your professional opinion?
Through traffic.
I mean, we can do our best to project what's in the future, and that's what we're trying to show you here. So you can see we're well within our projected 2040 volumes. The max capacity would be like deadlock rush hour traffic like we see in some other areas of the city. So there's available capacity here on the street to accommodate it, but it's really up to you to determine what you think is available. But there's definitely positives with A, as far as bicycle pedestrian amenities and parking, but then there's also benefits to access.
still have-
So I think all of these
all three options have a bike lane.
Yes,
Correct.
they all have, yes, correct.
David?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm moving from C to B just because I don't like how in C the bike lane kind of merges with the through traffic lane. Look at C, the lane that goes through
Requires the right turn lane.
It's a shared, and that's a configuration that exists today on Mill, on the east side of the street.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a relatively common condition, and that's what we're proposing at Mill to keep.
It's called
that-
the right-hand turn lane.
Yes, it is. It's a shared right-hand turn. It's
Like
a
a
common
rubber-
treatment, but
Hey, for a
it's in
biker,
tight
that's-
situations. That is what we can offer.
No, I think that's smart. I mean, for a biker, if they're just going to continue on straight, no, I like that option in C. But what I can't understand is, you got right before you turn right going south on Maple, you have the island popping out, which I assume before that island is parking spaces?
Correct. Yeah. Or the lead in to that parking. And just trying to
Oh, there's no
provide,
parking there.
there's parking a little bit west of there.
Yeah.
There's parking right here?
And also trying to continue to provide, you know, in the C option, you're maximizing your traffic capacity. So we are still trying to introduce in those maximum traffic capacity conditions, the opportunity for landscaping.
I'd really like C, but I'll settle for B, if that seems to be a good
right.
compromise.
I really like C as well.
I like
think
parking.
we really need to consider the growth in the downtown area and
I
the
agree.
traffic. It's not going to get any better. We need to move people as
So wait a
efficiently
minute,
as we can.
that's three of us for C. Is there a fourth person?
Who's the other
for
one?
C?
Are you for C?
Yeah, I am.
All right, I'll go C.
Oh, C wins.
Sorry.
Yes.
C wins.
Come on, Lauren.
Right.
I was gonna see.
She didn't say anything.
I'll just say two words: induced demand.
Moving
Mill.
eastward to Mill Avenue.
B.
B is closely aligned with what you have today. There's, again, I described
trees.
At the April presentation, there's a little bit of excess asphalt out there, so we still are able to grow some of that pedestrian space and some of the landscaping, but B is closer to conditions today, and A is where you have a shared right turn and through lane.
I'm fine with B.
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 Everybody?
Yep, we're good.
Yeah.
is there ever the possibility, not on all of Fifth Street, but just in the Mill Avenue parts, to do a pedestrian-only crossing signal where everyone's got a red light and pedestrians go? Because one of the issues that comes up in a lot of these tight intersections is that, and I'm not saying it would be permanently that way, I'm saying just on like Friday and Saturday night from 7 to midnight. Because one of the issues that frequently comes up is the pedestrians take all of your signal. And so regardless of what the theoretical traffic is, the actual traffic pattern is one person pulls out, maybe one person pulls behind them, they wait for the yellow or red, and then the two cars go through, and that is it. That is the whole capacity.
Yeah, so that treatment, sometimes called a pedestrian scramble or a Barnes dance, all kinds of fun names. We've looked at it on a couple of occasions. Usually the request comes because people believe that it's more efficient for pedestrians to get more pedestrians through, and it's actually less efficient because you would move all your vehicles in one direction, all your vehicles in another, and then move all your peds. And similarly, whereas under current conditions, during each vehicular phase, we can also move pedestrians at the same time. So it's something we could look at. Generally, they're usually installed when you have a heavy amount of left turn crashes into pedestrians, and so it kind of splits the pedestrians and the vehicle movements. That's usually generally where you get the benefit, is those prevent those kind of crashes. Most cities are invented in Denver, and most cities have moved away from doing those. We do see a few cities doing it, usually in a more walkable pedestrian area where you'd see maybe less traffic than we experience on the Mill Avenue corridor.
Do these signaling, are they sophisticated enough that you could do like just Friday night or just Saturday night for 3 hours? Or is it like how many setting versions are there? Or is it just like, you've got 3 settings and that's what you get for the whole week?
No, we have, from a signal standpoint, we can do by time of day, by minute of the day. But generally, with that kind of treatment, there's specific striping that goes in the street, and that would have to be in there 24 hours, 7 days a week. So it's something that we could continue to pursue, but probably would require additional analysis because just the traffic conditions, the streetcar going through there.
I mean, I would defer to you all as experts. I just know there's a couple of spots. That's one of them. By the Newman Center is another one, between the Newman Center and the Foundation building, where the signal is really a pedestrian signal, and the car is just sort of edged through the pedestrians unsafely.
Yeah, and I basically cut.
That's a whole nother issue, but we're only talking about this right now, but that's all, I agree with what that comments.
It's true.
We need to talk about
The
this.
streetcar coming in, how does that work with streetcar too?
There's other things to consider. I'm just throwing it out there.
All right,
I know
so-
you guys have
so
they've looked at the pedestrian scramble, especially for the Newman Center area, and have you done studies to show it actually would slow things down a bit?
We've done,
So-
as I was kind of, yes, as I was alluding to earlier, it's not, from a safety standpoint, it can improve if you're seeing those type of crashes, but from an efficiency standpoint, it generally doesn't improve for the bicyclist or pedestrian movement or for the vehicular movement. So.
Okay, so Mill Avenue, is everybody okay with B?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the City Hall block and the intersection with Myrtle, this is in front of City Hall, in front of Mission Palms, Police Courts. There's 2 options here. One is the A option, which is, again, the baseline option that we had brought forward in the springtime of 2017. And then the B option is where we are retaining those left turn movements onto Myrtle and the left turn movements into the City Hall parking lot, left turn movement into Mission Palms.
I mean, a lot of the comments that we heard from Mission Palms too, I think B would help answer some of the concerns that they have. B, having that access, that turn, the space for the ability to turn in to their property.
A just reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where Kramer wanted to widen the lanes. I mean, it's just unnecessary. All right. B.
All
Right.
Forest to college.
And I think I know where you're headed, but the last
Hey, I
intersection
actually got
on
my
the east.
joke.
I did. I like that episode. And so
I'm sure you do. That's probably your favorite episode of any show ever.
Maybe not ever, but the B option here is one that retains your dedicated left turns at the intersection. And then C is similar to the Maple intersection where you're providing a right turn. We don't, on the north side, you have the transportation center, so there's no citizen access into vehicular access into that facility, but the C option does provide that right turn into southbound Forest.
There's I'm sorry.
Yeah, and at college, we're not providing really any changes that we're providing full access at college. And we are adding at College more landscaping, and we're adding the 2 islands that you see there that have some green possibilities, and still retaining all the turn movements there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, backing up, before you get to College, is there parking on both sides of 5th with option B towards the stadium?
No, there's only, the north side of the street is all operations for transportation center, so that's where our Orbit buses and others.
No, not there, previously.
City Hall.
City Hall.
Oh, City Hall.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
there are in both A and B, there's on-street parking options.
Those are for private, because I know PD has their, so PD's parking stays the same, I would imagine.
I'd have to get the exact numbers for you. I think we have a couple that are public, and then we do have some that are dedicated, and we're working with the police department to figure out how many need to be dedicated on that north side of the street there for their use.
And a bus stop, right?
Yeah, we also have a bus stop in there.
Okay.
That's just
Like
on the.
C.
Just to speak to the next one, I have been involved. There's a retail potential restaurant space in the bottom of the hotel building there on the southwest corner, and there has been some questions about whether that could be activated into like an outdoor seating or something like that. So I'd just like to point out that question has come up.
So what does that do?
Which
That
would
would
they
be,
prefer?
they'd be looking at the B option.
And using that parking area.
Right, that parking would.
Who would?
Oh, I see. B.
A little bit of extension of outdoor patio space as well as. Yeah.
Joel?
I would advocate also, again, for B, and once again, if we do come down that road where we have to have a right turn lane, we can easily come back and make that right turn lane happen. But I think B would be great.
So,
I like C still.
And what about,
Lauren?
when looking at this section, I mean, this is a heavily pedestrian-laden street and bike street. There's been bike accidents on the street too. Remind my council colleagues, is there one that you feel, I mean, you're not going to recommend something that's not safe, I realize, for bicyclists or pedestrians, but what about the safety aspect for these choices we have before us?
From my experience, generally, a shorter crossing distance is usually preferred on that. From that standpoint, what can happen sometimes with a stopped vehicle is that it can block the line of sight, and so it's tough to see oncoming vehicles. We would do the best to design this in the most safe possible.
Which has a shorter crossing distance of A, B, C?
Option A would have the shortest, where you're just crossing 2 vehicular lanes of traffic as opposed to B or C. And one thing that we are showing here is currently we only have a crosswalk on the west side. We're showing adding additional crosswalk on the east side, which could potentially improve some of that.
And I really worry about this intersection. You think about game days, you think about, I mean, it's a really popular.
Shut it down.
Yeah.
Game days.
The whole day?
It's a block party.
It's a really intensely used pedestrian, people walking to the light rail, people biking to the light rail. It's just of all the intersections that we looked at 5th Street, this is the one that's I have the most safety concerns about.
So, where's everybody?
C.
C.
B.
B.
I'll
prefer A, but
Restaurant.
I'll go B in deference to Lauren's comments.
Does B address her issue?
Yeah,
It does a
does
little
B.
bit because it takes up the right turn lane and shortens the intersection.
B is shorter than C. The crossing
I'm fine with
distance
B, but I think there's 4 for C.
And you can.
We can always
Well,
make it
yeah,
into
but I've
C.
given into every single one, you guys.
Yeah, Lauren's been giving in.
This is the one,
I'm not sure where the count is right now.
So I think there's 4 for C, and there's only
Is there?
2 for B and
I'm
1 for
changed to
A.
B. I think there's,
Oh, then now there's 4. Well, and then B. There's only 2 for B, now there's 3.
I'm a B.
Lauren's willing to go B, I bet, if
For
we
B,
get her
man.
instead of C.
Yeah.
B.
B, okay.
We're gonna. I feel like I'm in class A, B, C, multiple choice.
Thank
I'm using B a lot.
All right, thank you very much.
One question,
Next steps.
on all of them. Right there at the corner, the intersection of College and University, is that an island or is that just paint?
It's landscaping.
It's an
Landscaping.
island.
Yeah, it's an island with landscaping, yes. Yeah.
Hold on.
Eric, really quick.
Yeah.
And the one stakeholder group I noticed we didn't go and talk to was Tempe Tourism. And I'm just wondering with the special events and maybe some of the feedback that they've got, maybe it would be good to go and chat with them just a little bit and see if they've got anything that they want to add. Or at least they have good knowledge of what we're doing.
And we
Yeah,
got
they
some
might-
of that information from the DTA as well.
Yeah, I saw DTA on the list, but I noticed I mean, their perspective's completely different, right? But similar because there are a lot of special, yeah, you probably wouldn't hurt.
Ideas too.
Yeah,
Okay.
and especially
So-
our special events department too.
Thanks for that feedback. We want to advance, we will now advance the project into construction documents, and you will see stuff back again. We want to partner this with other, the water line, the pavement management, some of the other construction projects that
We're
are.
going to do the special meeting, and we're going to come back and finish it.
Thanks.
Get the project. Thank you.
That's great.
Good job.
The truck might be kind of short, we might be able to fit.
Okay, let me do the border one first, and then, well,
Either one. Either one. Sorry, they're both kind of
all
short.
right, we're going to be, there's a couple things. We're going to have a special meeting at 6, or close as we can to 6. If it's okay with the council, can we take the food truck and the border wall, then we'll break, and then we'll go do we'll have the special meeting, we'll come back and finish with Vision Zero, and then Committee of the Whole. Okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. Item number D, food truck policy update. I think this is going to be quick.
Could potentially be very quick. Mayor, Council, good evening. Chad Weaver, Community Development. There is no presentation this evening. I am essentially here to answer questions or receive feedback. In the spring or early summer, there were some questions about what we're doing with food trucks. Friday packet was requested. We issued that in August. No feedback was received. Nothing has changed. We have not had any action requesting or questioning our handling of the food trucks. So we have essentially just provided that to you again and stand ready to answer any questions or like I said, receive any feedback or direction you might want to give.
Any questions or comments on the food trucks? Councilman Granville and Councilman Cubey.
So, I don't know when this was, maybe 3 or 4 years ago when a couple people took up the food truck thing. The feedback that was sort of, I don't know if it was formally or informally given, was that idea that DTA didn't really like food trucks competing with other fixed businesses. And so when I met with Kate, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, we were talking about food trucks, and I was like, why don't you guys like them? Kate's response is, we never took a stance on it. We never had an opinion on it. We never said we didn't want food trucks down on Mill Avenue. And so I think one of the reasons I was curious to get this back is I would like to try and continue that conversation of at least on Friday or Saturday nights, allowing a food truck to take, apply for it, have them pay some $200 fee or whatever we think is appropriate, and take a metered parking spot on Mill Avenue for a limited amount of time, right? 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night or something like that, just to add a little bit more vibrancy and a little bit more foot traffic to the areas. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have this discussion, honestly.
And to that point, my understanding was that, permits are needed for food trucks, and nothing's preventing someone from going to DTA to get a special permit to look at for a special event to have a food truck. I do know there was a lot of policy discussion before and just recently about competing. You get people paying a premium for bricks and mortars, and then you're going to have someone come in with a food truck that could come and go. I mean, I get that part too. And I know if you just circle back, even when people were proposing kiosks, and the challenge was that you're providing the same type of food that a building or a member that is leasing space on Mill Avenue. For example, Mike Jennings, when he had Campus Corner, he was opposed, and I don't blame him, for having a vendor cart that's selling sunglasses or something of that nature that is the exact same thing that he sells in his own store. And he's paying, bricks and mortars and a lease and so forth and a premium to be on Mill Avenue. So there is that issue there. But I think my understanding was, Chad, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that we do have a process in place where the DTA can issue permits, or we do, one of the two. I can't remember which one, based on our policy discussion.
There are special event permits that sometimes allow for food trucks.
And that's listed if you look at. Okay.
So, Mayor, if I could just retort, I think the issue is not that there's a special event permit. So if they do the arts fair, absolutely, it's a special event, they can do food trucks. That's not really what I'm talking about, because that is allowed under the special event. I'm talking about on a Friday or Saturday night, somebody wants to take a barbecue truck, pull it up, either, I don't care if it's with a permit or without a permit. Right now, they can't do it either way. And be there for a fixed amount of time. And I certainly understand the concern that there are people that are paying rent on brick and mortars, but DTA hasn't taken a stance that they're against these doing it.
I would suggest that we reach out to them before we do anything.
Well, I did. And Kate said they've never taken a stance on it, and her, at least individual opinion, not as a body, is that it wasn't an issue. And if you look, I would make the argument that adding food trucks actually adds, it doesn't take away from other businesses. It actually adds a sense of vibrancy. It adds a sense of like placemaking. And so it graders the pie, for a better lack of a term, increases the pie. And so while the food trucks might take away some business, they actually add more vibrancy and more business overall.
Lauren, then Councilman Navarro.
So I had originally asked that this be brought up, and I know Councilmember Granville, you had urged this discussion a few years back before I was on the council, but I was approached by a business owner who's on Rural Road, Wendy Rogers, many of you know her, and she wanted to rent, for her employees, rent a food truck and just offer that up as a sort of community building thing, as a fun thing, and she was shocked that it would be $1,200 to do so. And it just seemed a little exorbitant. That's not an area where there's a lot of restaurants, and she just wanted to encourage that, instead of people leaving work and driving away to go to eat, they could just eat there, and it just seemed like a large amount of money to me.
It's a yearly fee, isn't it? It's not per event. It's
Right, but if she only wants to do it for a year, once or...
It would be semi-permanent, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if you want to do it as a one-time thing or a couple of times a year, it's kind of expensive. And then you look at areas of South Tempe that don't necessarily have the density to attract those brick and mortar restaurants, but would like to see that kind of like vibrancy, like you mentioned. It is kind of expensive to have a food truck come in. It just seems like there's some room in our policy to make those, I don't mean exceptions, but craft a policy that will encourage this kind of, encourage food trucks in places where there's no restaurants.
I think, Chad, I get that, but if you could resubmit to the council on a Friday packet, when this first came up, I think we had a stakeholder process meeting on this issue.
My recollection.
So if you could resend that out to us, so we're not reinventing the wheel, and especially
Nancy Horman, when she was the director, at that point.
Now, time is different, so I would still, before we do anything, I would still reach out and make sure that there's conversation between Kate Borders and the members of the DTA before anything happens, because that's part of the stakeholder process. But it doesn't hurt to get that information on the stakeholder process.
Right, but it was 4 years, how many years ago? So there's been a new count.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying, but you still.
At that point as well, 4 or 5 years ago.
So to be clear, you're looking to recap the stakeholder involvement from the previous?
If you could resend it out, the stakeholder process that we have, but also, I think we need to reengage Kate Borders and DTA and talk to their stakeholders and see how they feel about an issue that is being brought forward right now regarding food trucks on Mill Avenue.
I will say no conclusive answer either way. I've talked to Kate a couple of different times, and my sense was similar to what you mentioned. She doesn't recall a concerted effort to keep them out, but she was going to go to her group for feedback, but I haven't heard back from her yet. She may not have had time. It was over the holidays when I spoke to her, so.
It'd be good to get her feedback. But I kind of agree with Lauren, though, too. I think if there are some things that we can loosen up, especially in areas where,
I agree.
There aren't any food establishments around there, and maybe they want to do something on an occasion, I don't know why we make it so cumbersome and expensive for them to do that. So to me, that's a completely different thing than going downtown.
Yeah, I do too.
Maybe at least just maybe bring that piece up and just
Good.
maybe we could
Anybody
talk
else?
about it, or you could give a recommendation, Chad.
Just FYI, there was a food truck preemption bill that was introduced.
No, in all seriousness.
In the legislature?
To completely preempt the local government regulation of food trucks.
Oh my gosh, if I were joking.
Is there anything more local than eating?
All right, thank you. All right, thanks, Chad.
Though.
All right, next item is the border wall resolution and letters.
Elections, the state concern.
So, not saying it's going anywhere, but it's out.
We have the border wall. we're going to get this, and then we're going to take a break and then convene for that special meeting and come back. So the next item we're going to look at is the border wall resolution. It's pretty straightforward in our packet, unless we want Ms. Higgins to come forward and answer any questions we may have on this.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Yeah, just to follow up, we did go through the stakeholder process that you guys asked us to do before. We contacted SRPMIC. They did not have an official position on the border wall, but they actually are part of an intertribal council that does have a position in opposition of the border wall if they're not otherwise consulted. Also, the memo lists several cities that have taken resolutions against the border wall. The league has 2 areas in Arizona, Tucson and Pima County. And the NLC didn't really have a lot of data from it. They just sort of had the same number of cities that had worked on this. So. And then we worked with the federal lobbyist on the language that is included in the packet, both for the letter to President Trump, the letter to our congressional delegation, and the proposed resolution.
I think we're good. We'll go ahead and move forward as a council.
Mayor,
Yes.
I absolutely disagree with the border wall, but I do think that this is a matter of more federal policy, and I just worry that it gets us into something about a resolution about Russia probes or a resolution about who gets nominated for Supreme Court justice, and so while I disagree with the border wall, I'm going to take a pass on this one just because I don't think this is the forum for it.
Okay. Duly noted. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back, hold the special meeting, and then come back and finish the IRS.